Please welcome Skift Director of Research, Seth Borko.
Everyone, hello. Welcome back from your break. I hope you all enjoyed some donuts. They looked delicious. My name is Seth Borko. I'm a director with Skift Research, and I'm so excited to be here with you all again. It's always great to see everyone. The topic of my talk will be the state of travel, but also we've added, obviously, and the impact of AI. That's what we're going to talk about. We've got three big topics that I want to discuss today. The first is answer this question that kind of Rafit's been asking us a lot more in the edit room, which is how much longer can this travel boom continue? I want to talk about what does back to normal look like for the travel industry and share some data with you, and then end on this idea of new technology, not just AI, but including AI, and what does it mean and how it's kind of set to upset normal all over again. So let's start. I remember during the pandemic, we used to talk about being the new normal, right? We'd watch like Tiger King and be on Zoom, and we'd all bake bread, and everyone was making banana bread and all that stuff. It feels like we're very much moving from a new normal to just plain old normal. You know, no more banana bread, more TSA security lines. And I think that that is something that's happening in the travel industry. We're seeing businesses start to normalize. And we see that in our numbers as well. So this is revenue data. It's from a new product. We've launched the Skift Travel 200. It's 200 of the largest publicly traded companies in the travel business. We aggregate the revenue. We're looking at the growth rates here. And I think those first two bits are pretty obvious to us all, right? We experienced that pandemic collapse of revenue down massively. And then we lived through this period of hypergrowth and rebound as the world reopened and everyone was excited to get back to travel. We were seeing, at one point, 90% plus revenue growth, 60, 50, huge numbers. In this most recent quarter in Q2, this index tracked 19% year-on-year revenue growth. Now, that's damn good. I think you can ask anyone who runs a public company, 19% revenue growth is awesome. But it's clearly a deceleration from 40, 50, 60% revenue growth. And so we are seeing things not come down, but come back to normal. And it makes sense, right? Most major travel sectors are either fully recovered or will be fully recovered by the end of this year. And so we're definitely seeing the end of that pent-up demand and the end of that rebound. But that doesn't mean that, look, we're not heading for a crash. It doesn't mean that things are going to end. We're not going to come to a crashing halt. The reality is that, yes, you know, the rebound is over. Yes, we're moving back to a more normal demand environment, but our industry is still very much under-indexed relative to other industries and to the rest of the global economy. So this is that same revenue data in black. It's indexed to 100 in 2019, and then next to it in blue is that global GDP figure. And so we've recovered, we're growing, but if we were to get back to our historical share of GDP, it's like $175 billion of revenue that we could catch up. And that's just public companies. If you add in private companies, it's a significant amount. So I'm not here to say, you know, it's over, things are going to do bad. I'm just saying things are probably going to look back a little more normal. Growth is going to decelerate, but it's not the end of the world. There's still a lot of growth potential left. And I think one of the conversations we've been having on stage a lot here today, and we'll continue up tomorrow, is that it matters what sector you're in, and it matters what region you're in, right? Not everything is recovering linearly or uniformly. So I've kind of been thinking about it as sitting along a curve, where at the very top of the curve, you have sectors that are still rebounding, and the bottom, you have sectors that are back to normal. And we're going to see subsectors and regions slide down that curve from rebound back to normal. And so there are some that are further along, like car rentals or short-term rentals. Those businesses didn't just get hurt by the pandemic. They actually grew and accelerated during the pandemic. And then, so they're going back to normal a little bit faster. Then there are some others, like Asia Pacific, like business travel. Those are areas where we're very much still in rebound mode. And so we have to think about the big picture of what the travel industry is doing as a whole, but we also have to take into account that each kind of sector and region and subsector has its own unique dynamics. So I want to talk a little about, if we get back to normal, what does getting back to normal look like? And I want to share kind of three ideas and three themes with some data behind it. So the first is that we saw this huge boom in domestic travel during the pandemic and out of the pandemic. But if we're going to come back to normal, we think we're going to see a lot more long-haul travel, a return of long-haul travel. We had James Thornton on stage earlier. This is some data from Intrepid Travel. It's always cool to share data from a privately held company, adventure tour operator. You can see they're seeing a huge amount of growth in North Africa, in Asia. These are long-haul destinations, especially for an American Australian customer base. We see people really eager to return to long-haul leisure, not just domestic or regional leisure travel. Another back to normal trend, moving from the consumer side and talking a little bit about the B2B side, is channel wars, is these fights over distribution. We talk about distribution all the time, whether you're going to have first-party traffic share or third-party traffic share. And I think one of the things that we saw happen during the pandemic was a lot of first-party brands and suppliers kind of declared victory. They saw a huge boost in direct traffic. There was a lot of confusion, a lot of breakdowns in the system, and people wanted to book direct, so they had that security of knowing that their vacation was going to take place. This is traffic data of Expedia and Booking in the US, and you can see people are visiting the online travel agencies again in significantly larger numbers than they were before the pandemic. There's more price sensitivity in the market. People are shopping around again. And so I think that, well, maybe the channel wars had a bit of a truce during the pandemic. I think we're very much going to see more battles, let's call it, around distribution, third-party versus first-party distribution. And the final one, which we've also discussed on stage a bit here today, is I think back to normal means back to business travel. We've been so focused on leisure travel, it sometimes feels like we have overlooked a bit of the business market. We had a couple of people here on stage talking about it. We have a quote. These are from the most recent quarterly earnings. Tony Copano talking about group travel in his hotels. Many hotels are talking about group business. We are here today. This is group business. And so we're very much seeing that recover. Transient business travel is a little farther behind, but we think that that will start to come back soon. And I really like this quote from Carsten Spohr at Lufthansa saying, hey, look, at Lufthansa, we're going to start adding corporate-focused flying routes for the first time in almost 2 years. So I think that's a very cool and exciting trend, and I think it's one that we talk a lot about blended travel, about leisure travel, and that's still going to be here. We talk about leisure travel, still going to be here, but we can't forget about the return of business travel. I think that's all part of coming back to normal and the normalization of demand in the travel industry. But even as we're getting back to normal, there's the potential for disruption. There's new technology that's moving in that has the potential to transform this industry. We've talked a ton about it on stage here today. Artificial intelligence. This is our Skift research estimates for generative AI specifically. We were one of the first companies to do research on generative AI in the travel industry. We think it's, at a minimum, a $30 billion opportunity to kind of disrupt and do new ways of working and doing business within the travel industry. We actually identified 4 immediate ways that we think AI will have an impact or is already going to have an impact on the travel industry. We looked at developer efficiencies. So not even just like specific AI for travel, but if you have any sort of tech or web development or any sort of development in your company, which all of you really should, there's abilities for developers to become more efficient. There's the customer support functions of AI in terms of enabling customer service agents, giving better experiences across the board. There's a really interesting piece around reputation management. Generative AI is really good at handling unstructured data, things like reviews or all sorts of comments left online in social media, being able to process those and action those in really interesting ways. And of course, I think probably the biggest one is search and how we can use AI and generative AI to request and search for and book travel in new and interesting ways, kind of breaking outside of that traditional search box. And actually, I had a conversation with Navan earlier today, and they talked about new search and booking tools available through generative AI. So that's really exciting. What does it mean for our jobs? This is something that Glenn Fogel mentioned, too, earlier on stage today. We did a survey of Skift readers, and we kind of asked, hey, how much of your job do you think could be done by AI tools today? And they answered, they think 1 to 20% of their jobs today could be done by AI tools. And we said, what about in the future? They said, in the future, maybe 20 to 40, maybe even 40 to 60% of jobs could be done with AI tools. This is a really big deal and has a lot of potential for disruption in both how we do jobs and in labor forces and all sorts of stuff. And it gets one wondering, how secure is your job really? Now, this is asking for a friend, totally hypothetical, but I posed a query to ChatGPT. I said, let's say you were a travel research analyst and you were worried about being replaced by an AI. How would you comfort that analyst? Well, this is actually a real response from ChatGPT, and I think it kind of hits the nail on the head. It says, look, it's important to keep in mind that new technology is coming, but it doesn't replace the need for human judgment, for humans in the loop for complex decision making. And robots don't have the same emotional intelligence and empathy that humans can have, and we're a very fast-changing industry. I think these are all really good points that AI is not really here to replace humans, but kind of change how a lot of jobs can be done. So I want to close with a final thought about AI. And I know I'm the numbers guy, but I actually wanted to tell a bit of a story, because technologically driven disruption is not new. It's happened before to our industry and to other industries. And so, we think of disruption as really cutting-edge, high-tech stuff, but this is an early camera, and this is what disruption would have looked like if you were in 1850s and you were a painter, right? We all carry phones in our pockets today, cameras in our phones, cameras everywhere. It's ubiquitous. It's not even thought of as like high-tech anymore. But if you were a painter, this was a very big deal. Why? Because you had spent decades, if not centuries, working on detail, on painting portraits, battlefields, generals on horses, really important subjects that you had to capture in really, really high and fine detail. But when the camera came around, you can see this is a picture and a portrait of the same person. The details are there. It was very, very hard for a painter to out-compete a camera. You can't be more detailed than the camera. You can't be faster. You can't be cheaper than the camera. So what do you do if you're a painter? Do painters no longer exist? Of course they do. And what we saw in response to that was new styles and new creativity. And we got movements like the Impressionist movement, where, this is Starry Night, one of the most famous pieces of Western art ever created. Van Gogh is not worried about capturing the details of every single star in the sky, and he's not worried about every single leaf on the tree, right? Because he doesn't need to, because a camera can do that. What he cares about is the emotional core of the impression he's trying to give you of that, night in that field in France. And I think that holds a really important lesson for the travel industry when we think about what will AI, and not just AI, any technology, digital tools, what will any of it really mean for the travel industry? It can, in many ways, can help free us from the details. This is not what travel is about. The experience of travel is not fare codes and fare buckets and green screens and all this technology. And yes, there's a lot of jobs in it, and there's a lot of need for it. But the real core of what the travel industry is about is this. It's about emotions, and it's about creating connections between coworkers and colleagues, connections with friends and families, learn about other countries, connecting with business workers, with colleagues, coming to conferences like these. And I think we often can miss the forest for the trees, right? And so I think the future of AI and technology, what it means for the travel industry, is it frees us up to focus on that core of what travel really should be about. So what does AI mean for travel? Look, it means a lot of things. It means a lot of things are changing. There's absolutely new technology coming. We will work in different ways. Customer behavior will change. We will be forced to adapt to it. And jobs and job roles and functions will change. But what's not changing is the emotional core within travel. This industry is growing fast, and it's growing faster than GDP because it's an aspirational experience. People want to travel, they want to be on the road, and they want to see new destinations. That's not going to change, and I think the companies that can really embrace that and stay true to that North Star will succeed. So that's it for me. Thank you so much for having me. And by the way, we launched this new Skift Travel 200. If you want to learn more, you can scan that QR code. So thank you so much.